Just another clinical Monday right here on the 11th SA AIDS conference, and we are catching up with I want to put pressure and say the big makers of things, and joining us for this conversation as we shine the spotlight on U equals U, treatment as prevention. We're going to dive into that a little bit later, or rather more for this conversation, so you're more than welcome to be part of it. We are live on our Facebook page, also on Twitter. The Facebook page, it is OramPopIn, and the Twitter page, it is @in_health. Please use the hashtag U equals U and hashtag Clinical Monday, and you can participate as well by leaving your comments and question on the comment section below. Find us, www.popin.org gives you the behind the scenes, and my name, I didn't even introduce myself, that's how excited I am about this. My name is Nkosi for Nkosi. Chance, thank you so much for being with us. So like I said, treatment changes things, and we are shining the spotlight on U equals U. Today we have Dr. John Blandford, who is CDC SA's country director, and they will be joining me for this conversation. John, thank you so much for joining me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yes, I'm excited too. It's so much to speak about when we talk about U equals U, and you know, we want to obviously shine the spotlight more on the topic. You know, so as Pop In, we have launched U equals U, and we've sort of changed the theme and said get your art on. Obviously promoting you know, people that are living with HIV to get their art on, because it is indeed, you know, when you get your art on, untransmittable, I mean undetectable equals untransmittable, and now the theme is prevention, or the treatment as prevention. Your thoughts?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as we're starting here, we're sitting here in Durban at the SA AIDS conference, and June is both Pride Month, obviously, for the Global Pride Month, but it's also for CDC, where I'm at, it's also the month in which 42 years ago, in this month, we identified the first cases of a rare pneumonia in 5 young gay men in Los Angeles that became what we now thought of as AIDS, and eventually we identified as HIV being the factor. So when I'm looking back at those 42 years, just how far we've come, and to be talking now about treatment as prevention, those early years were so hard. There was so much death, so much horrible disease, and now to have, for these last 20 years, that we've seen the rapid expansion of treatment availability, for the ability for CDC as part of PEPFAR to collaborate here in South Africa. It's extraordinary to see where we are in the treatment response. And so that we've come from, you know, from no hope to treatment being very effective for restoring health and restoring longevity in people's lives, but now to this actually amazing moment where it actually serves perfectly as a prevention method.
Most definitely. You touch about where we've been, and I think as a globe, because then those cases really sort of like changed you know, the conversation when it comes to HIV, and you know, now we are talking more about U equals U. Do you think that we should amplify the messaging on U equals U, and what should actually the emphasis be on? Is it just, you know, undetectable equals untransmittable, or we should really emphasize other things that make up U equals U?
Yeah, just to step back, because I think before we get into that, what I'd really like to talk about is just a little bit about the science behind it, because I think people have a hard time accepting that the message is strong as it is. Undetectable equals untransmittable, right? It's a very firm statement. But we've known for a long time that when people get onto treatment, it lowers the risk of transmission. And then we got really definitive proof first 2011, when the first findings came out of a study that showed that there was a large reduction of treatment in serodiscordant couples, where one partner is positive and one is negative. And when the positive partner is on treatment, we saw a dramatic reduction in transmission. And then since that initial study, we've done 3 follow-up studies, in partner and opposites attract and partner 2. And you know, with all those 4 studies together, we now have data from 5 continents. And those last 3 studies are really interesting because they intentionally chose couples where one person was positive and on treatment, the other person was negative, and those couples did not use condoms. The negative partner was not on PrEP. So the only prevention intervention was the positive partner being on treatment and being virally suppressed. And what they found by tracking all those partners over, they documented 125,000 sexual acts These were heterosexual partners, they were same-sex partners. Of those 125,000 sexual acts, no condoms, no PrEP, there were 0 transmissions, fully 0.
So the science is there?
The science is there, and we knew, and this was the foundation of the U=U movement back in 2016 when the advocates got together with the scientists, and the advocates said, how come this is not being shared with us, the PLHIV, with our partners, with our communities? Because this is profoundly changing. So we were treating treatment as prevention before that as something for society. The more people we get on treatment, why we're doing test and start, why we do treat all, right? The more people we get on treatment, the fewer new infections we're going to see. But this took it down to the individual couple. It basically said to the serodiscordant couple, or the positive person with a negative person, you don't have to worry about transmission if you're on your treatment and you get an undetectable viral load and you keep it there by taking your treatment daily. We can take this down to that level, and we have so much data now. We have data from straight couples, from gay couples, that we know for every couple type, for every type of sexual act, we know 0 is 0.
0 is 0.
And that's really kind of amazing. We don't say that often in science and medicine. And so there's so much data now that a serodiscordant couple could be having sex without condoms if they stay on treatment. The positive person stays on treatment for 712 years without fearing that they would transmit to one another.
It's quite interesting because the data is there, but also data being there, it speaks to, or rather, it makes us beg to ask the question of, then why do we have still new infections? And we just spoke to Dr. Tato Chirakeri, who said the decline is there, but we don't really see a decline. And speaking of declines, CDC has committed and set the goal post to reducing new infections by 90% by 2030. What's your perspective on that, or especially on new infections? Because here's how I see new infections, John. I see new infections as a challenge to that goal, to say come 2030, will we have new infections? Because we are all aspiring to have a free HIV generation.
Exactly. So I think the issue is, well, first of all, if every HIV positive person on the planet were on treatment, undetectable, and continued to take their medications every day, we would have 0 new infections. Right? Knowing that would be a perfect outcome. We're not there yet. So we're going to treatment as prevention. U=U is going to be foundational to that success. But then in parallel with the other prevention interventions that we know also work. PrEP. So U=U is 100% effective. PrEP, taken on a daily basis, is 99% effective. We now have event-driven PrEP, which is also highly effective at preventing new infections. Condoms continue to have a role. And they have a role that I would say is complementary, because we're also worried about other STIs, right? It's not just about HIV, but the thing that's so important about U=U is it's the first thing we have that actually starts to address stigma, because it really basically no longer is the person living with HIV a threat to others. And we need to get to a point where society understands that, so that people do not fear sleeping with someone who's HIV positive, do not fear setting up a life with someone who's HIV positive. But we also need the PLHIV to feel empowered, to actually know that they've done all they need to do and they are not a threat to anybody anymore.
Most definitely. I want to invite you for this conversation as we take in your questions and comments on U=U. If you reflect on where or how far we've come, especially in South Africa, actually the entire world when it comes to HIV, new infections, PrEP, new ways of taking PrEP, ARVs changing from what they were to what they are now. What have we achieved? What are the milestones? Please share those with us on our social media platforms. We are live on Facebook, it is at @OranPopIn, and also on Twitter, it is at @N_Health. Don't forget the hashtag Clinical Monday, and also hashtag SA AIDS23 for the SA conference. Make sure that you also interact with our previous content as we were at or still are at the SA conference, and try to see, who did we speak to and what conversations did we have. But joining us now, it is South Africa Country Director for CDC, Dr. John Blandford. We were talking there about U=U. I want us to touch on milestones because it's not all doom and gloom, to be honest. It's not all doom and gloom. There has been some milestones, there has been some, great achievements. Maybe you can touch on those, if they're the ones that you can remember.
Oh, certainly. Look, we have, if you think where we've come in South Africa over the last 20 years for HIV treatment, when treatment first started here, we were trying to treat those who were most ill, most critically in need of treatment. So that people were near death. We saw the Lazarus effect where people's lives were restored, their health was restored. And now we're at a point though, we have 8 million people living in South Africa with HIV. We now have 5.7 million of those people on treatment, which is an extraordinary accomplishment in 20 years, if you think about that. The challenge is, we still have some 2 million people who are not on treatment, 3/4 of whom probably know their status and have chosen, for some reason or another, not to be on treatment at this moment. And I think this is why we have to keep coming back to this, is why aren't people on treatment when it's available, it's freely available, widely available. And I think U equals U is actually one of those opportunities for us to give a positive message, a different message, that say that this, if you get on treatment today, you can actually not only have a long life, a healthy life, but you can have a normal life. You can actually have sex, you can date, you can set up families just like anyone else. And that's a different message that we're only really starting to communicate widely here in South Africa.
Most definitely. I then want to talk about, so we do have challenges, we do have some achievements that we've made, especially when we speak U plus U, and it is game-changing when it comes to the HIV field. But I also want to then talk about, because there are people that are they know their status, but they choose, like I said, they choose not to, for some reason or the other, be on ARVs. But let's touch on PrEP, because that's another game changer. Should we then, when we have a conversation, John, about U equals U, and still talk PrEP, because U equals U, undetectable, untransmittable, that's only when you are HIV positive and you are taking your ARVs, get your add-on. But when we have a different conversation about PrEP is prevention, should we have parallel conversation, speak U equals U, and also encouraging people to get on PrEP?
Yes, absolutely. I think I think for 2 reasons. I mean, several reasons, but the important thing about PrEP is it is for a person who is HIV negative and at risk of infection. It is your positive intervention where you're taking control of your own prevention, right? So that it's important. We want people living with HIV to be on treatment and to be undetectable. We want people who are negative and at risk of infection to be on PrEP as a like I said, near perfect prevention intervention taken daily and event-driven PrEP. So these things actually complement one another. I used to say that this is PrEP and ART are 2 sides of the same pill, right? It's using ARVs for prevention for the person who's negative and for treatment for the person who's positive, but also prevention for the person who's positive. So I think we do need both, and we need to scale up both rapidly, especially among gay men, among transgender people. This is we know the risks, we know the prevalence of HIV in our community, but we should see each other as allies in this. That if I were to come into a pop-in clinic, I would be wanting to look for my potential date, my potential partner in the waiting room, because I know that you're going to go in. I'm going to go in. If I'm negative, I'll leave with PrEP in my pocket, and if I'm positive, I'm going to leave with my ART in my pocket. And I know that everybody in that waiting room is doing the right thing and taking care of their health and taking care of their prevention intervention.
Most definitely. Possibly. As we wrap it up, I mean, we are at the AIDS conference, the 11th South African AIDS conference out in Durban, ICC, and we see how KP, or key populations for those who don't know what KP is, are coming out, I want to say a little bit stronger this year. So we see the programs are here, we see the pop-ins, we see them. So it then says that something is done right in the KP side when it comes to HIV. Wouldn't you agree? Also, are KP programs highlighted better, especially in this conference?
I think so, and I think we're seeing a lot of discussion around U equals U here at this conference, right? And the key population programs were out front in terms of bringing this message to South Africa, getting out to the community. And if I may say, so I've been sitting here talking to you as the CDC director, as a 62-year-old man, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just important that I have another side. Sometimes you'll see me without my suit on. Hopefully I'll be able to come back without a suit on someday. But I'm also a gay man.
Yeah.
And I'm a man who's been living with HIV for 38 years. So I tested positive when I was just 24 years old. So I can still go right back to that moment.
Yeah.
I have a HIV negative partner. And so all this, I say this as a scientist, as a CDC director, but I also feel this all very personally. And I feel this, I know I have a face of a 62-year-old, but if I don't look in a mirror, I still feel that 24-year-old inside me. And I remember how devastating that HIV diagnosis was.
Yeah.
And this was back in 1985. So as you know, there was no hope. I was told, I could have full-blown AIDS in 2 to 3 years at that moment, right? But that's not what I was worried about. What I was worried about is I would not be able to date. I had never been in a long-term relationship yet, and would I ever get to have those experiences? And that's the thing that I felt robbed of. I was worried less about living a long life at that point. I just wanted to have a normal life. And this is why this moment in the HIV response is so incredible. Because with U equals U, by achieving and maintaining the undetectable viral load, and then maintaining that by taking your pill every day, my life's normal. I'm no threat to my partner. And it's an extraordinary moment to think that, because that was such the source of the stigma, the self-stigma for all those years, and I feel like that has completely gone. The science has always been the case. I've been undetectable now for 21 years, 22 years, but we didn't know the science. So I had been no threat for my partner for 22 years. So we managed HIV with condoms, right? But it turns out we didn't need the condoms. And how wonderful that would have been to be able to know that back then, and know that I'm not a threat, and that, again, I'm from CDC, I love condoms. They're absolutely essential for prevention of STIs. But in my relationship with my partner, my husband, for 28 years, I would not have had to use them all the time I was undetectable. And so I just want to explain, this is why this conference is so exciting this year. And the fact that we can start sharing this message more broadly within South Africa gives people so many reasons. Those 2 million people who aren't yet on treatment, a significant proportion of whom are gay and other MSM, transgender people who really could benefit from this and benefit from knowing just what the positive aspects are of treatment, including long and healthy life. But more importantly, gaining a sense of self and normalcy back.
Most definitely. And I think with those words, John, you wrap it up quite nicely, because I was going to ask you that what would be your message? But I think by just sharing that story,
I think that is my message.
That is definitely the message. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I think this conversation can reach 2 million of those people in South Africa, but more people outside South Africa to speak U equals U and say that actually the science is there and literature is there to support that. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is Dr. John Blandford from the country director for CDC right here in South Africa, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. What are your talking points, or what have you picked up for this particular conversation as we shine the spotlight on U equals U on the 11th SA AIDS conference? Share those with us on Facebook. It is at Orampop, and on Twitter it is at @n_health with the hashtag Clinical Monday and hashtag SA AIDS 23. Until next time, happy streaming.